Welcome back to Gambling Flow, your daily dose of all things gambling. I'm Russell Kane,
And I'm Fiona Blake.
and we are ready for another deep dive.
Always exciting. So, what are we getting into today?
Well, today we're taking a look at progressive jackpot slots.
Oh, those are fun.
Yeah, those massive, life-changing jackpots. We see them everywhere, online, in casinos,
Absolutely. And they have a surprisingly long history.
longer than people might think, right? Like, I was reading about the first slot machine.
Liberty Bell.
Yeah, the Liberty Bell, way back in 1895. Crazy to think it all started with that. A clunky metal box, no flashing lights or digital displays.
And imagine a 50-cent jackpot was the big prize back then.
Yeah, talk about a different era. But those early machines, they weren't even spitting out actual coins, were they?
No, they were mostly about amusement.
Yeah.
Paid out in gum or drink tokens.
Wow, that does feel quaint compared to the fortunes people chase today.
It wasn't until the 1920s that slots started paying out in real money. Then things really started to shift in the 60s.
With the electromechanical machines, right?
Exactly. Remember Bally's Money Honey? The iconic handle, the payout cup?
Oh, yeah, I've seen those in old movies.
That was a game changer. Suddenly, slots had lights, sounds, and most importantly, the potential for much bigger payouts.
They paved the way for the progressives we know and love today.
Speaking of which, did you know that Megabucks might not have been the first progressive slot?
Really? I thought that was the OG, the granddaddy of them all.
Well, there's evidence that Bally might deserve that title. Their model 785A,
What year was this?
released in 1964.
Okay, way before Megabucks.
Yeah, and it went by the name Progressive 777. It had this built-in jackpot that kept growing with each bet.
Interesting. Okay, but just to be clear, what exactly makes a progressive jackpot different from a regular slot jackpot?
It all comes down to how the jackpot grows. With a regular slot, the jackpot is fixed, right? But with a progressive slot, a small percentage of every bet placed on that machine gets added to the jackpot pool. So the more people play, the bigger it gets. And sometimes it can reach insane amounts, especially when you have progressives linked across multiple machines or even multiple casinos.
That makes sense. So it's like this collective lottery, everyone feeding into this giant prize pool. No wonder those jackpots get so big.
Exactly, especially with online slots where you potentially have millions of players contributing.
Right, right. So we've got standalone progressives, which are tied to a single machine.
You got it.
Then there are local progressives, where a group of machines within a single casino are linked.
All feeding into a shared jackpot.
And this became possible because of microprocessors in the 70s, right? They allowed the machines to communicate with each other.
Exactly. Think about the impact of that tiny piece of tech. Microprocessors revolutionized the industry. Suddenly you had linked jackpots, electronic auditing, more real combinations.
Multi-coin games, too.
Right. Bally's Model 922 is a great example of that. Players could wager multiple coins on a single spin, so the potential payouts went way up.
Okay, so these microprocessors basically paved the way for the mega jackpots we see today.
They were a game changer. And they set the stage for wide area progressives, which is where things get really interesting. And that's where a guy named William Syred comes into the picture.
Syred, tell me more about this guy.
He was a visionary, started as a distributor for Bally's, and really understood what players wanted: bigger jackpots, more excitement. He pushed for innovation and diversification of slot machines.
And this led him to invent video poker.
Great. And to found IGT, International Gaming Technology. They became a giant in the gambling world.
Okay, so Syred was the mastermind behind Megabucks, the game that really made wide area progressives famous.
Exactly. Megabucks launched in 1986. It was revolutionary. They used telephone lines to connect machines across multiple casinos in Nevada, creating this massive network of players feeding into a single jackpot.
Wow, that's brilliant. So instead of just the players in one casino, you had a whole network of casinos fueling this massive prize pool.
And it captured the public's imagination. Do you remember reading about Terry Williams, the first Megabucks winner?
I think so, vaguely. Remind me.
He won almost $5 million back in 1987.
That's life-changing money.
Especially back then. And it was a huge PR win for IGT, gave them instant credibility.
And Megabucks became the game everyone wanted to play.
It's still going strong today, available in over 130 casinos in Nevada. Do you want to know what the current jackpot is?
I'm always curious, even if the odds of winning are, pretty slim.
It's sitting at a cool $11.5 million.
Wow. And they've paid out over $821 million since it launched. Crazy.
It is mind-boggling. But yeah, the chances of actually winning are...
astronomical.
You could say that. The odds are about 1 in 49,836,032, More likely to get struck by lightning twice.
Okay, I'm definitely not quitting my day job. But I'm curious, I thought slots was supposed to be fairly generous, at least compared to table games.
Mm,
But you mentioned that Megabucks has a surprisingly low RTP.
right. RTP stands for return to player. It's a percentage that indicates how much of the money wagered on a slot machine is expected to be paid back to players over time.
Okay, so a higher RTP means you have a better chance of winning, at least in the long run.
Exactly. And Megabucks has an RTP of around 88.61%. A lot of online slots have much higher RTPs.
So people are basically lining up to play a game where they're practically guaranteed to lose.
It might seem counterintuitive, but it's about the dream, that tiny chance of turning a few dollars into a life-changing fortune. And that dream is a powerful motivator.
I get it. It's the allure of the what if. But Megabucks wasn't the only successful wide area progressive, right?
Of course not. There's also Wheel of Fortune, which is practically everywhere these
I
days.
see it all the time.
It was a brilliant concept. Tapping into the popularity of the game show, those exciting bonus rounds, it really resonated with people.
So we've gone from standalone machines to local progressives to these massive wide area networks. But then the internet came along and changed everything, didn't it?
It did.
Yeah.
Online casinos took the idea of linked jackpots to a whole new level. Suddenly, you could have players from all over the world contributing to the same jackpot.
So even bigger and faster growing jackpots.
Exactly. And this time, it wasn't IGT leading the charge.
They were a little late to the online game.
They were. Microgaming was one of the early pioneers. They released Cash Splash in the late 90s, one of the first online progressive slots.
Okay, but the online progressive that everyone talks about is Mega Moolah, right?
That's the big one, the king of online jackpots.
Huh.
It launched in 2006 and has paid out some of the largest online slot wins in history. That safari theme, the massive prize pools, it's captured the world's attention.
Every few months I hear about another Mega Moolah player winning millions.
It's incredible. The biggest Mega Moolah jackpot ever won was $19.4 million back in 2021.
Wow, it's enough to change your life a few times over.
Absolutely. And if you look at the top 20 progressive jackpot wins of all time, Mega Moolah occupies 16 spots. That's how dominant it's been.
That's wild. But I did hear that Mega Moolah was recently knocked off the top spot. Is that true?
It is. The WowPop Mega Slot took the crown in late 2023, paying out a record-breaking $42.1 million.
$42 million from a single spin. That's mind-blowing.
It's a testament to how far online progressives have come, and even though IGT might have missed the initial online boom, they're making moves now that could shake things up again.
You're talking about their omni-channel progressives, right?
Precisely. In May 2023, they announced they were linking their online and land-based Wheel of Fortune games. So now, players can contribute to the same jackpot, whether they're playing online or at a physical casino.
That's pretty innovative. It's like they're creating this hybrid gambling experience.
It is. And it could be a glimpse into the future of progressive slots, even bigger jackpots, interconnected networks spanning the globe. It's an exciting time to be a slots enthusiast.
No doubt about it. But there's also a bigger picture to consider, right?
Huh?
The social and economic impact of these jackpots, the potential role of new technologies like VR and blockchain. Lots to unpack.
Absolutely. We're just scratching the surface here. There's a whole other side to these massive jackpots that's worth exploring, but that's a conversation for another time.
You're right, Fiona. We've covered a lot of ground already. We'll have to pick this up in our next deep dive.
I'm looking forward to it.
Me too. And to our listeners, thanks for joining us on this journey. We'll be back soon to delve deeper into the world of progressive jackpots. Until then, gamble responsibly,
Welcome back to Gambling Flow.
where we're picking up our deep dive into the world of progressive jackpot slots.
We covered a lot of ground in part one, from the Liberty Bell to the rise of online progressives.
Yeah, we talked about Megabucks, Wheel of Fortune, Mega Moolah, even those record-breaking WowPod jackpots.
It's fascinating to see how far these jackpots have come, but there's another side to this story that we need to explore.
You're talking about the bigger picture, right? The social and economic implications of these massive jackpots.
Exactly. It's one thing to understand how they work, the mechanics of it all, but it's another thing entirely to think about the ripple effects they have on individuals, communities, even entire economies.
It's a complex issue with a lot of different angles. I
Yeah.
mean, on the one hand, you could argue that these jackpots are a harmless form of entertainment, right?
Well, absolutely. A chance for people to dream of a better life, to escape from reality for a little while.
Especially in times of economic uncertainty. Who doesn't love the idea of turning a few dollars into a life-changing fortune?
It's a powerful fantasy, but there's a flip side to that coin, as there always is.
What are some of the potential downsides?
Well, the odds of winning a progressive jackpot are astronomical. And for some people, those long odds can become a problem.
Especially for people who are struggling financially or have a history of gambling problems, it can be a slippery slope.
It's that classic conflict between hope and reality. We know deep down that the odds are stacked against us, but that tiny sliver of hope, that what if factor, can be incredibly powerful.
Yeah, especially when it's tied to the possibility of escaping financial hardship. That's why responsible gambling practices are so crucial.
Absolutely. We need to keep promoting the message that gambling, including playing progressive slots, should be viewed as a form of entertainment, not a solution to your problems.
Players need to be aware of the odds, set limits for themselves, and understand that the house always has an edge.
It's about having a balanced perspective and remembering that for every person who wins a life-changing jackpot, there are countless others who walk away empty-handed.
We tend to focus on the winners, the flashy headlines, but the reality is that most people don't hit those mega jackpots.
Right. It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of those big wins, but it's important to keep things in perspective.
Now, let's talk about the economic side of things. Progressive slots generate a ton of revenue for casinos, for governments.
It's a huge industry, no doubt about it. And that tax revenue can be significant. It can fund important public services like education, infrastructure, healthcare.
I'm thinking of Las Vegas. Casinos and gambling are the backbone of that city's economy.
Exactly. And the same can be said for many other cities and regions around the world. The gambling industry, fueled in part by the popularity of progressive slots, has become a global economic force.
But of course, it's not all sunshine and roses. There are always potential downsides to consider.
One concern is that the revenue generated by gambling, particularly from progressive slots, might not always be distributed fairly or used effectively.
Right. There's a risk that a small percentage of the population, including casino owners and high rollers, might reap a disproportionate share of the benefits.
And on the other side, you have people who might be struggling with gambling addiction who could face financial hardship. It's a delicate balancing act.
Finding ways to maximize the economic benefits of gambling while minimizing the potential negative impacts on individuals and communities.
Transparency and regulation are key. Governments and regulatory bodies need to make sure that the rules are fair, transparent, and designed to protect players.
And that the tax revenue is used responsibly, benefiting the community as a whole, not just a select few.
It's about finding that sweet spot where gambling can thrive as an entertainment industry while also contributing positively to society.
It's a challenge, for sure, especially as progressive jackpots continue to grow and become even more interconnected. And speaking of interconnectedness, you mentioned earlier that new technologies like VR and blockchain could have a big impact on the future of progressive slots.
They could completely change the game. Imagine stepping into a virtual reality casino, a fully immersive digital world where you can interact with other players, explore different games, and experience the thrill of progressive slots in a whole new way.
That sounds incredible.
Yeah.
It would take the concept of a global network of players to a whole new level.
And blockchain technology could revolutionize the way those jackpots are managed. It could ensure fairness and transparency for all players.
I'm still trying to wrap my head around blockchain. Can you give me a specific example of how it could be used in progressive slots?
Sure. Imagine a progressive slot machine where every bet, every spin, every transaction is recorded on a public blockchain.
Okay, so everything is out in the open, completely transparent.
Exactly. Players could see exactly how the jackpot is calculated, how the random number generator is working, how the winnings are distributed.
It would eliminate any doubts about the fairness of the game. No more wondering if the system is rigged against you.
It would create a level of trust that's currently lacking in many online casinos.
That's pretty amazing. And what about VR? How would that change the progressive slot experience?
VR could take the immersion to a whole new level. Imagine putting on a headset and being transported to a virtual casino. You can walk around, interact with other players, experience the sights and sounds of a real casino, all from the comfort of your own home.
It sounds like they're trying to bridge the gap between the convenience of online gambling and the social immersive experience of land-based casino.
Exactly. And when you add progressive slots into the mix, it becomes even more exciting. Imagine playing a progressive slot in VR with the reels towering over you, the lights and sounds all around you. You can actually feel the anticipation building as the jackpot grows.
It would be a whole different level of engagement. But I also wonder about the potential downsides. Could VR make gambling even more addictive?
It's a valid concern. As with any new technology, there's always the potential for unintended consequences. And when it comes to something as potentially addictive as gambling, we need to proceed with caution.
It's important to have those conversations about the potential risks and benefits, and to find ways to harness the power of innovation while also protecting players.
We need to create a safe and responsible gambling environment for everyone. That's the key.
Well said, Fiona. It sounds like we're on the cusp of some major changes in the world of gambling, and it's going to be fascinating to see how it all unfolds.
It certainly is. The possibilities are endless, but it's important to approach these new developments with both excitement and a healthy dose of caution.
Couldn't agree more. But now it's time to turn our attention to our listeners. We've got some great questions lined up.
I'm looking forward to hearing what's on everyone's minds, so stick around, folks. We're about to dive into your questions and share our insights. Welcome back to Gambling Flow.
For the final part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground today, from the history of progressive jackpots to the potential impact of VR and blockchain.
And now it's time to answer some questions from our amazing listeners.
Let's dive right in. Our first question comes from Sarah in London. She asks, with so many different progressive slots out there, how do I choose the right one for me?
That's a great question, Sarah. I remember feeling overwhelmed when I first started exploring the world of slots. So many options, so many themes. It's tough to know where to begin.
It can be daunting, but there's a perfect progressive slot out there for everyone. It's all about finding the one that aligns with your preferences and your goals.
Okay, so where do we start? What are some key things to consider when choosing a progressive slot?
Well, the first thing is to think about your personal preferences. What kind of games do you enjoy? Classic three-reel slots or modern video slots with all the bells and whistles?
Yeah, those video slots can be a bit much sometimes. I tend to prefer the simpler games myself.
It's all about finding what you enjoy. And don't forget about themes. There are progressive slots based on just about every theme imaginable, from ancient Egypt to superheroes.
You know me, anything with pirates or treasure, I'm there.
Of course. And then there's the big question, the jackpot. Are you chasing a life-changing mega jackpot, or do you prefer a smaller jackpot that's hit more often?
It's that balance between risk and reward. Some people only play progressive slots when the jackpot reaches a certain amount, like a few $1,000,000. They figure, why bother with anything less?
It's a valid strategy, but you also need to consider the game's volatility and RTP.
Hold on, you mentioned RTP before, but what about volatility?
Volatility refers to how often a slot machine pays out and how big those wins typically are. High volatility means you might go a long time without a win, but when you do win, it could be huge. Low volatility means you'll win more often, but the wins will be smaller.
So it's kind of like playing the stock market. High risk, high reward versus slow and steady growth.
That's a great analogy, and just like with investing, your risk tolerance should guide your decision.
Makes sense. Do your research, know yourself, and choose a game that fits your style.
Exactly. Our next question comes from John in New York. He asks, are progressive jackpots truly random, or is there a way to predict when they're going to hit?
The age-old question. Is there some secret formula, some hidden pattern that can help us crack the code of progressive jackpots?
I wish I had that answer, John, but unfortunately, there's no way to predict when a progressive jackpot is going to hit. These games are powered by random number generators, incredibly complex algorithms that ensure every spin is completely independent of the previous one.
It's like flipping a coin. Each flip has a 50-50 chance, no matter what happened on the previous flips.
That's a great way to put it. So, whether the jackpot was just won or hasn't been hit in months, your chances are the same on every spin. Pure luck.
So all those theories about hot and cold machines, those are just superstitions.
They are. Statistically speaking, there's no such thing as a hot or cold streak. Each spin is a fresh start.
Well, that takes some of the mystery out of it, but it also makes it more fair.
Absolutely. Everyone has an equal chance. Okay, our final question comes from Maria in Los Angeles. She asks, what advice would you give to someone who's never played a progressive slot before?
That's a great question, Maria. It's easy to feel overwhelmed when you're new to all this.
It is, but don't worry, progressive slots can be a lot of fun. Just remember a few key things. First, set a budget and stick to it. It's easy to get carried away chasing that big jackpot, but always gamble responsibly.
That's crucial. Don't chase your losses. And Fiona, what else?
Before you start playing, take a few minutes to familiarize yourself with the game rules and the pay table. Make sure you understand how the progressive jackpot works, what the minimum bet is to qualify, and what the different symbols mean.
So knowledge is power, even when it comes to gambling.
Absolutely. And don't be afraid to ask for help if you need it. Most casinos have staff who are happy to explain the games.
Great advice. Anything else you'd add?
Just one more thing. Remember to have fun. Progressive slots are a form of entertainment, so relax, enjoy the experience, and who knows, maybe you'll get lucky.
I like that. Keep it fun. Well, Fiona, I think we've covered just about everything there is to know about progressive jackpot slots.
We've explored the history, the social and economic impacts, the potential of new technologies, and even shared some tips for new players. It's been quite a journey.
It has. But as always, the conversation doesn't end here. We want to hear from you, our listeners. Share your stories, your insights, your questions in the comments below.
We love hearing from you. Your experiences and perspectives enrich this conversation.
And that wraps up another deep dive here on Gambling Flow. I'm Russell Kane.
And I'm Fiona Blake.
Thanks for joining us. Remember to subscribe, like, comment, and share this episode with your friends. And as always, gamble responsibly.